What's up, Buttercups? Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, your host, Brian McWilliams. We will have a guest later on the show, by the way. As you mentioned, or as you mentioned, as I mentioned in the show title here, there's been a change in how medical debt is going to be impacting credit reports and credit scores. So I'm going to bring Andy Schoonover from Crowdhealth on to talk about that. He's always a great guest and always a good interview. So that'll be the second half of the show. But before we get into that, Donald Trump, what is the man thinking? What is the man doing right now? Because he seems to be intent on ostracizing everyone possible, of completely burning MAGA to the ground. And what I'm talking about is that he just talked about the Jeffrey Epstein list, right? He's out there telling, why are we still talking about this list? People still want to talk about it. Why? Because it's a bunch of high-level pedophiles, a man who was in all the most powerful rings of politicians, of celebrities, of world leaders, all going to his island where we know factually there were underage girls and where Jeffrey Epstein was, of course, arrested and put in prison for the alleged, as indicated by the victims, rape and sex trafficking of these people, of these girls, underage girls. And this was also looping in Ghislaine Maxwell, who also is sitting in a prison cell. And by the way, we'll see how long she lasts, because she had just said recently that she is willing to testify and she's willing to spill the beans. So interesting times. All of this is happening after Donald Trump is saying that he is not going to release the files. The Department of Justice is not going to release the files. You've got the DOJ fighting with the FBI. You've got Cash Patel and Dan Bongino. Don Bongino. I hate that guy's name. Just said that he was going to resign. I don't know if it's actually happening or not. The entire situation is such a clusterfuck of just lies, ineptitude, false promises. I mean, Donald Trump went out there saying he was going to release this and now is telling us that we have to stop talking about it, when the vast majority of the country, not just Republicans, not just Democrats, want to see the list. We want to see these people held to account. We want to see who was capable of these horrible things and who enabled this man, who was on record as being a CIA asset and had an Israeli passport and is rumored to be an agent of Mossad, or at least affiliated with the Mossad. All, of course, tied into blackmail scandals. I mean, there's a reason there are holes with cameras in his house. And yet we're being told that the files that came out have nothing to do with it. Oh, no, it's just kiddie porn. Okay, then why is Ghislaine Maxwell in jail? But the most recent thing, as I said, the destruction of MAGA will be complete after this, because Donald Trump had his deplorables moment. And what I mean by this is that Donald Trump went out there and told his base, hey, if you want to see the Epstein files, I don't want your support. Now, this is fundamentally stupid in every possible way, because you can go so far in ostracizing your base, and maybe his base, they're kind of like the dirty girl who likes to get her hair pulled a little bit, right? They want a little bit of that stuff from Trump. But when it comes down to telling people, I don't want your support because you want to see the list of pedophiles that I promised I would show you, and doubling down on that, and I'm going to play this video for you guys, by saying not only that it was a hoax, that it's the same thing, and this is the most ridiculous line of reasoning I've ever heard, that it's the same people who pushed the Russiagate hoax that were somehow allowing this Epstein list to become a big deal again. Oh, that's lovely. Well, I can't share this video because Firefox doesn't work with, my Firefox settings in StreamYard are not set to share the screen. And because StreamYard is incompetent, it no longer works on Chrome. So I have to use this. So I guess we're not sharing it. But anyway, Donald Trump he said right in front of the TV camera, by the way, standing next to a neighbor of Jeffrey Epstein for 20 years, that the supporters that wanted to see those Epstein files were very bad people. Very bad people. This is his deplorables moment. This is going to piss his base off. This is, I don't think, territory that you come back from when you're outwardly protecting pedophiles. when you're actively telling people that you had cheered on, promised to document to, that they are part of a hoax and supporting a hoax and that you don't want their support anymore, you have fucking lost the bead. You don't know which way you're going. The rowboat's floating down the river. You don't have a paddle and you're down shit creek. And that's where this is going. And look, I know Donald Trump is a lame duck president. He's not going to be going for 4 more years anyway, unless this ridiculous alleged coup, which would allow him to run again, that the idiots over at Vox would talk about. He doesn't have anything to worry about because he's only in there for, 3 more years anyway. But at the same time, he is an egomaniac, and you would have to think that he would want some level of support because this is shattering before our eyes, which is great, honestly, frankly, great for the Libertarian Party. You know, I tweeted out, if you're a very bad person who still is furious that pedophiles are being protected by this president, well, guess what? If you don't want to give your support to Trump because he doesn't want your support, you come on with the Libertarian Party. We'll gladly take very bad people who want to see the Jeffrey Epstein list. And you know what? From the response to that tweet, a lot of people are leaving MAGA. A lot of people are going to come back because they're fucking furious about this shit. The one thing, similar to the trans issue, the one thing you cannot violate is people's children and the sanctity of protecting their kids. And even though this pedophile ring obviously was very insular among the elite and only affected a couple different girls, as far as we know anyway, people are going to think about their own kids. And what if pedophiles are busy raping their children? It hits on a level that is so, it's feral, that instinct to protect your young, that this is why it'll never go away. People will never let this go. It will be the dark spot on Donald Trump's legacy. I can promise you that. This will define what people say about Trump. Donald Trump, even if he does something great, even if the economy comes roaring back, right? Even if he manages to get Putin to back off and ends the war in Ukraine, okay, what are all these crazy things could happen? Even if he dismantles the Department of Education, please God, make it happen. What he'll be remembered for is, oh yeah, Trump, the guy that protected all those fucking pedophiles. And you're seeing big time influencers turn on him. You can only pay cat turds so much to try to dissuade people from the way they feel about these actions. Now, what's interesting to me, though, is that the way they went about this was so absurdly stupid. Everything from the insistence that the list was coming out to giving those idiot influencers the binders that had previously published information to wave around, to assuring that, Pam Bondi, I've got the files on my desk. I've got the list on my desk. Okay, well, now there's no list. Now we're being told there's no list to be found. They could have very easily, and this is my, decades of public relations experience here. They could have very easily spun this. And with Jeffrey Epstein being dead, either by suicide or murder, they have the perfect way to spin this. And here is all they had to do is say, yes, we had the files, we have the drives, we have the list. It's on the drives. We have the drives. We can't get in them. They're encrypted. If we try to get in there, the drives will erase. There's got the highest level of encryption on there. Maybe Mossad helped him on there. He's dead. We can't get into the drives. If we can get into the drives, we will release the information. We'll keep you posted. And then you just let it fade from public knowledge. You can tell people once in a while, out, we still can't encrypt it. Look, this is what it is. We can't get in. Maybe when technology improves in 5 years, you'll be able to get in there, address it to the next administration. There you go. You successfully told people you can't do it, why you can't do it, and conveniently because Epstein's dead, as I mentioned, and you've kicked the can down the road and made it the next administration's problem. And if that turns out to be a Democrat administration, well, all the better, because now they're the fuck-ups, right? Shouldn't be this hard. But the fact that he is attacking, Trump is attacking his supporters for demanding that pedophiles be brought to justice and exposed when we know who was on the plane and we know how powerful these people are to cover it up, to deny it ever happened, to gaslight the shit. I mean, this is the most epic gaslighting I've ever seen. To gaslight the shit out of people and tell them that the whole thing was a hoax when people are in fucking jail and one of them killed himself seems a bit ridiculous. Mark my words, you are seeing a legacy defined in real time. All right. Last thing, guys. Well, actually, second to last thing, because I'm going to have Andy on momentarily. I gotta splice them together. Is that I wanted to talk about Michael Douglas, and this comes at the same time. I've talked about Pedro Pascal, who I can't stand. Who's out there right now, and Pedro Pascal's got a trans sister, which is why he's so attached at the hip to the wokest of woke policies and trans ideologies. And look, that's fine. If your sister's trans, you're probably going to be more inclined to be that way. But he's out there just, ruining his goodwill with the American people who are over this trans issue. And at the same time, you've got Michael Douglas, of course, very famous actor. Michael Douglas is an icon. He is now retired. And I'm not sure if I've ever heard Michael Douglas speak much about politics previously. But now that he's retired, he decided that he was going to speak up and talk about American politics and just prove what a goddamn insolent doofus he is. So Michael Douglas says that that U.S. idealism does not exist now, and people are going into politics to make money. Michael, number one, how naive are you? People have always gone into politics to make money, to be power brokers, to go into politics, to get into positions of power, to put yourself out there, to put the money on the line, to rub elbows with powerful people who will fund your campaign. You have to be a sociopath. You have to be a narcissistic sociopath. So all of these people are in for the money and the power and the prestige, except maybe Thomas Massey and Rand Paul. Those are about the two guys that aren't. But he's talking about this film festival, and he says that, and tell me if you've heard this one before, he fears for democracy in the U.S. under the Trump administration. Kind of reminds you of the repeated ad nauseum term, Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, right? Now, there was a great SNL sketch that they did, and it was when Kamala Harris was still in the running, as if she was ever really in the running. But they had, I think it was Harvey Dean, right? Henry Dean, Harvey Dean, whoever, Hillary Clinton's running mate. Was it Dean? I can't remember the guy's name. That's actually the point of the bit. They have this guy who was Hillary Clinton's running mate when she ran. He comes out, and he's talking to this liberal, and it's played by by one of the guys from the Kroll show that did Too Much Tuna. I'm blanking on his name. Oh, John Mulaney. So John Mulaney's playing this ultra liberal dingus who's saying that, oh my God, democracy is on the line here. It's the most important election of our time. And the game show host goes, all right, well, let me bring this guy out. And he brings out Tim Kaine. I think that's his name. He brings out Tim Kaine, and he goes, hi, you've been saying that the democracy was on the line and that the election was the most important election of our lifetime. And 8 years ago, I ran with Hillary Clinton. What's my name? And John Mulaney is sitting there going, It makes a brilliant point. And Mulaney goes, well, maybe if you're more memorable and if you were a guy like Tim Walz. And he goes, I'm exactly a guy like Tim Walz. And it shows it side by side. They're both, white guys with a little bit of white hair and balding. It's a brilliant sketch to show that these people keep repeating the same stupid bullshit. And Michael Douglas is showcasing how fucking stupid he is. And I'll read his full quote and finish it up in a minute. But these people are always, democracy's on the line. It's the most important. Oh, my God, that's the worst person in the world elected. And nothing changes because the people in power are working together. It's a duopoly monopoly. They're all working in conjunction. It's all theater. They're all making shit tons of money. They're all protecting Jeffrey Epstein. They're all voting for bills to go through. They're all increasing spending. None of it changes. Right? They're all protecting and growing their piece of the pie. They're trying to establish government and grow government. Donald Trump proved that point. Doge, for all of it purported to be as this great thing to cut government waste, really, we saw when it came, the rubber hits the road here, the big, beautiful bill gets passed. There's no cuts. In fact, there's more spending. Michael Douglas, let's get back to him. So this doofus, Michael Doofus Douglas, says that the nation is flirting with autocracy and that he looks at it generally as the fact of how precious democracy is, how vulnerable it is, and how it always has to be protected. I hope that we're struggling. I hope that what we're, struggling with right now is a reminder of all the hard work the Czechs did in gaining their freedom and independence. Politics now seem to be for profit. Money has entered democracy as a profit center. People are going to politics to make money. We maintained an idealism which does not exist now. And he wrapped up by saying he'd rather not go into too much detail, but I myself am worried, I'm nervous, and I think it's all of our responsibility to look out for ourselves. Dude, just shut the fuck up. I mean, it's this type of hyperbole doesn't help. We can talk about Donald Trump. We can look to Donald Trump and we can criticize the shit out of him. And I have been, as have many other people, criticize the shit out of him for the stuff that he does wrong, for the stupid decisions he makes, for the policies he pushes. And we'll give him credit for the good things he does. As I mentioned, the 1,400 State Department people walking out crying was joyous to me to behold, as is the 1,400 employees at the Department of Education just got fired. Wonderful. Love it. Put it in my veins. Good job, Trump. But at the same time, just saying, well, God, Trump's going to destroy our democracy is fucking stupid. You sound like a fucking idiot. You sound like somebody that's out of touch, that's just scared, that's reading off the same propaganda that you hear in your nonsense circles as you drink wine and fart in each other's mouths. It's stupid. It's not helpful. And honestly, all it does is further ingrain people into ignoring the tangible ways you actually could protect democracy, which comes in the form of reining in government, you fucking idiot, of stopping the spending that's driving the country into bankruptcy. That's going to cause its collapse and end democracy. You want to have warfare in the streets? Well, guess what? That's what's going to happen when everything defaults. As you know, it's Fight Club. Erase the credit history, erase the debt, and everything goes back to zero. Well, that's not going to happen with World War III. That's how you end your democracy, is with an implosion. Not this, oh my God, Donald Trump, this one guy's going to convince the military to put us under military rule. But that's fucking not going to happen. You're an idiot. What you need to do is focus on ways to rein in the power of the president. But you know, Michael Douglas didn't give two shits when Biden was in there using all of his executive orders. Michael Douglas isn't out there stumping to limit the power of the president's pen. He's not out there stumping for Congress to take back the reins and the power of the purse and the control of our military and make sure that we declare wars and to remove the authorization of force. That's not what he's doing. He's just whining to whine like a little bitch asshole. Okay. So sorry to go on a curse-laden rant right before I bring in a very sophisticated man, but I will segue right into that right now. Okay, so guys, for the second half of the show, I am welcoming in a longtime guest, a longtime sponsor actually of our show, and that is Andy Schoonover of Crowdhealth. The reason I wanted to bring Andy in, who is always really, really interesting to listen to and very well informed, is because a Biden-era rule, which allowed for people to not include debt from health issues, from cancer treatments, whatever it might be, healthcare debt, was not applied to your credit rating. Now, that has been removed under the Trump administration, and this is going to have a big waterfall effect, obviously, as all this medical debt gets lumped back onto credit ratings, which could have so many adverse effects. So, Andy, welcome back to the show. Where do you think this is going to take us?
Yeah, we just got news. I think yesterday a Texas judge basically took this Biden era rule that said that any bills that were medical related couldn't go onto your credit report. And they knocked that out. So there is still going to be the credit bureaus have actually said that they're not going to report any medical bills under $500. But the $50 billion worth of medical debt that's above $500 will go back onto people's credit reports. What they're saying is it's the average person will see a 20-point drop in their credit score as a result of this. I think it's 100 million Americans that have $50 billion of medical debt. So it's a pretty big deal that people aren't talking about. I think that I have mixed feelings on this, honestly. On one way, I for sure see firsthand these hospitals who are, basically coming up with arbitrary prices, forcing you to pay for it, and then saying, well, if you don't pay for it, then I'm gonna put it on your credit report and screw you. So, imagine going into a hospital and them giving you a $5,000 Band-Aid, and you're like, no, I mean, Band-Aid's not $5,000. There's no recourse for me, but they can now put it on my credit report. And so, in one way, I don't think that's fair.
Yeah.
On the other side of that, I also don't want people, if these bills are not going to be put on their credit report, just to use the emergency room as their free doctor. And the rest of us who are paying for our bills are now paying for them. The way I think I come out with this is I don't agree with a lot of what Biden does, but I do kind of like this rule because I do see firsthand these hospitals doing this. The people who are going in and using the hospital as their free medicine have shitty credit reports anyway, and so they don't really care. I don't think this really impacts their behavior. So it's a complex issue. I think ultimately you're coming out on the wrong side of this, and I will say firsthand that when we negotiate bills for our members, and when this law went into effect, the hospitals absolutely were more willing to negotiate on these prices than they were before this law. So I do think it actually had a behavioral change on the way that these hospitals are operating.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because similar to you, I find myself really torn on the issue because you don't want abusive hospital behaviors. And by the way, I years ago had a surgery on a back surgery, and yeah, UCLA Health, which is what I use out in here in Los Angeles, had threatened me. I got a call from a credit bureau threatening to impact my credit rating, and I, went crazy on UCLA and called them up and screamed at them because I was furious because I didn't expect it. It came out of nowhere. But like you're saying, I'm very torn on it because I understand, yeah, the debt that people are put into, and especially for something you can't see coming in so many cases, and that so many people are not using Crowd Health, where you've got a system where, it's crowdfunding in there, you're avoiding a lot of these issues, but the majority of people can't, and they have no concept of what it's going to take, and it comes out of left field to hit them. But yes, at the same time, as you're mentioning, is it fair to have that much debt that is going to impact your ability to pay back loans, to pay back creditors? It's a really difficult, complex issue. And I'm just myself. That's why it's fun to kind of talk through it. I'm trying to figure out which side of the road I do fall on here, even myself.
Yeah.
And, in the future, you have to wonder now, Donald Trump's made a lot of very unpopular decisions. Earlier in the show, I was talking about the Epstein list and what I'd called his deplorables moment, which is him saying that anybody who doesn't want who wants the Epstein files released is a bad person. I don't understand it. This seems like another move which is going to anger, as you mentioned, 100 million Americans, and is a little bit perplexing, if we're being perfectly honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't fully understand the reasoning behind this. Look, ultimately, I when I have these types of issues, I typically want to default into government not getting involved, right? Like typically, that's my default state. And so, what is the default state on this one? Which is let the markets play out and let's see what happens. In essence, these credit bureaus are a market-based game. I don't know how much regulation and stuff is going on with these credit bureaus. I hate freaking credit bureaus anyway. Like, so why do people do this in the first place? One is, to get their mortgage, to get their car payment, to get their credit card, right? I mean, these are all the reasons that people need a good credit score. And so in essence, what this is doing is if the commercial mortgage-backed security guys in New York can better evaluate, what your credit worthiness is, and therefore better price these commercial mortgage-backed securities, then you would think our rates would actually go down. The rates of all of these, credit-worthy kind of instruments go down. If you create another variable there that increase risk, then these rates go up. And so again, it's really hard to say, like, I want to, give all of these people who are investing in these free market economic type of instruments the best data possible. With that said, I went through a situation where I had no W-2, my credit score was awesome, I had tons of assets, but I couldn't get a mortgage for my house. Which is this stupidity of all of this. And so, look, I want innovation to come in. I think innovation can win the game ultimately. And so, it's a really hard decision. Sorry for my little rant there, but I'm just like, I want government out of most things and just let the market operate. This is such a hard one because the market, which is owned by these oligopoly hospitals, is not really a free market either, right? And so we're talking about a lot of non-free market stuff all interacting with each other. And so sometimes the government, it's a tough thing to kind of work through.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Is that, what I took away at the undercutting core of this is that the healthcare debt wouldn't be so pronounced if the system wasn't so broken as it is, because of the cronyism, because, as you said, the monopolies that these hospitals do have. I mean, so I can't remember if we talked about this in the show before, but the fact that hospitals have to get, basically to build a new hospital, to try to lower the cost or to provide more services, you have to get permissions from the other hospitals in an area to build a hospital. Stuff like that is just, it drives you insane. And the cartelization of all of these industries drives you insane. And that is the core of it. Without the spiraling costs of all this, you wouldn't have the debt. You'd have alternatives. You'd be able to go, as Crowdhealth does, you'd have the ability to negotiate with your doctor directly instead of being lumped into these massive institutions. And even further, and I'm sure this is something you deal with a lot, there's, because of the debt that these doctors get into, coming out of the academic side of things, they get lumped into these massive organizations too, because it's so hard to start your own little operation. So you go and become part of Kaiser Permanente, and now you're again part of this massive debt creating machine.
Well, I think the other part of this too, the law that you were referring to is called CON laws, certificate of need laws, which is basically you have to get approval from the government to go and build a new hospital. So if you think there is enough demand and you can get investors to go build a new medical facility, you still have to get state approval to do that, because in essence, the state is protecting the local healthcare community and not creating more supply in that market. And so in essence,
it's essentially price fixing.
It's essentially price fixing. You're right. And so in essence, what's happening then is all these private equity firms are going up and gobbling up all of these big hospital systems. And so now you have an oligopoly, and an oligopoly is able to move prices north a lot more than a free market system. And so it's all of these, government interventions again that have ultimately screwed up this system. And then you have a health insurance plan that actually makes more money if the prices are high too. We can go on that if you want, but so now you have a health insurance plan who wants the prices high. You want the hospital systems owned by these private equity firms who want the prices high. And so when the buyer and the seller want the things to go up, guess what? They're going to go up. And so this would be a non-issue if it was for an automobile, right? There's enough market forces out there to drive these prices down that we don't even need these stupid laws, because there's actually a free market mostly in automobiles, right? Or, the TV at Best Buy or TV off of Amazon or whatever it may be. And so it's just, we have all these government related, regulations that are driving up prices of healthcare that even make this applicable. We would never have this conversation if there was actually a free market within healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I am actually curious to hear, as you mentioned, so the higher the prices, the more the health insurance companies make off of that. Because tell me a little bit more about that, because you mentioned it, and I don't know a lot about those.
Yeah, with Obamacare, if you have $1,000 of premium, the maximum that a health insurance plan can make is $150. So how do they get 10% more the next year? Your premium has to go from $1,000 to $1,100. So they now can make $165. So they actually want premiums to go up over time. Hospitals want the prices to go up over time. So you have the buyer and the seller of this service both wanting the price to go up over time. And so what's going to happen? We end up with a healthcare system that's the most expensive in the world by 2x.
Damn. Damn. So there's just, So many evil bastards in the world. It's hard to keep track. That's what I'm coming to realize. Well, Andy, this has been awesome. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate. Tell everybody, about Crowd Health real quick, and of course, guys, don't forget if you use promo code Lions, you can get your first 3 months $99 each. But tell us a little bit more about what you've got going on. I haven't talked to you in a few months. Is there anything particular you'd like to crow about, Crowd Health wise?
Yeah, man, we're just growing like a weed, which is super fun. We have a lot of people out there. I think, similar demographic as who listens to your show. They're tired of all of these, government interventions. They want to get out of the sick care system. And so we've just seen incredible growth over the last few months, and it's been fun. So anybody interested, join crowdhealth.com and definitely use that promo code Lions. And you get $99 the first 3 months. So it's worth the try.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks. Great to see you. And thank you for the information, as always, my friend. Everybody, from me, Brian McWilliams, from Andy Schoonover over at Crowd Health, and from the Lions of Liberty Network. Keep those electric eyes on me, babe, and keep that ray gun to my head. I will see you guys later.